We're streaming.
We are streaming in 3, 2, 1. Redirected to Facebook Live. So good afternoon, Frankston City residents on this sunny Sunday. A nice change from the last couple of days. For those of you who have joined us for previous conversations with Peter Malone, we're trying to keep the Sunday sessions a bit lighter, and we're going to not be talking about policy areas, but we're just going to be talking about things of interest that have come across our desks or our inboxes or our news feeds over the last couple of weeks. It also gives me great pleasure to introduce Sue Baker, who's just declared herself a candidate for North West Ward. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
So welcome. I'm looking forward to having you in on our conversations, and also Brad Hill, who was talking to Glenn Cooper a few nights ago. And Brad, again, you're running in South Ward. I don't know if I should be concerned or congratulating you, but welcome to the campaign, and welcome to the Sunday session.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here. And don't be concerned, there's room for 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely right.
So look, plenty of people that have been keeping tabs on our Facebook Lives are aware of who I am and who Peter is. Sue, do you just want to take a moment to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, sure, I can, absolutely. So I moved to Frankston last year and very happy to be here. My background is in corporate arenas mainly, and some work in not-for-profits, and my area of specialism is learning and organisation development. So I've worked with a range of organisations over the years to help people deliver on corporate plan strategy. So moving to my new community and investing here, I sort of turned my attention to what I can do locally. And council was proposed to me at the start of the year, not something I'd necessarily thought of before, but the more I've researched it, the more I've felt really excited about it being a place I could perhaps have an impact and get involved. So that's me.
Fantastic, thank you, Sue. I understand you also work in the not-for-profit sector, so I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about offline as well. Particularly with your experience around learning and development, which is a particular passion of mine. And Brad, I know many locals know who you are and you're a familiar face. You have been on council previously a couple of terms ago, but if you'd just like to quickly introduce yourself.
Brad Hill is my name. Long-term Frankston resident. I've been, as you mentioned, on the council 2008 to 2012. I've been on the committee for the Frankston Chess Club. I was on the board for the Frankston Football Club. I was the president of the Frankston Football Club for a little while. I was on also the board of the Frankston Arts Centre, and I've decided it's time to come back to the council again. So here I am.
Fantastic. Now, as we were discussing a little bit earlier, we're trying to keep the Sunday sessions free of policy discussion, but just some of the things that have been going on around town really that have been on your minds. Certainly one that I've picked up on is the explosion in the number of spoonbills that are popping up around town. Really fantastic example of community spirit in a really difficult period of time. What are your thoughts?
I think it's an excellent idea. I mean, it's something for people to be involved in, right? And that's what's missing during all this lockdown. It's the interaction, it's the community involvement with each other as a community, and it's terrific because it's something that engages all age groups, right? It's kids, it's elderly, it's workers, it's pensioners, it's whoever. Everyone can make a contribution, and everyone can see what everyone else is doing. So, during these times of lockdown, that's exactly the type of thing we need. Yeah, so well done them.
And where have you seen them at the moment? Are they in the South Ward? Are they proliferating there?
We've seen, well, there's been a few around Langwarrin. Unfortunately, because of the 5K rule, I haven't been able to get out there. I know there's Overport Primary School, which is down the road from me. There's one down there. I think they're calling it, is it Overspoon or Spoonport? I think they've named it. You know, and it's a really good example, I think, of how communities have come together and tried to kind of put more spirit in there. Yeah. It's a bit like I think in the first lockdown, a lot of people put the teddy bears.
Teddy bears. Yeah, I was just going to mention that. I remember the teddy bears. I walked the other day, and there's some lovely little teddy bears out there, I've got to say, but it's of interest. People with their children, they're walking, and it's something for the kids to have a look at. And I'm sure parents are thinking, this is a good thing. It's like it gets their attention for a bit of time and makes the walk more interesting. So with these things, I had children once. They're growing up now, but it's the old. They won't be saying, "Oh no, we're not going for another walk, are we?" They'll actually like to go for a walk because they've got something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've still got the bears in my front window, but I also enjoyed seeing all the rainbow artwork as well on fences and pavements. I'm a big cyclist, so it was great to see that first lockdown when we could get out even further afield. So yeah, great community activities, I think.
Absolutely. It would be really fantastic to see that kind of spirit continue as we come out of lockdown and start rebuilding Frankston, I guess. So just on which kind of leads me to think a little bit about, you know, what's it going to look like after the pandemic's over? I mean, it will come to an end at some point. But, you know, I'm kind of thinking, you know, I've been working from home since March the 17th. And I'm sure you guys have probably been doing a lot of work from home over that period as well, if not for the whole of that period. You know, what is it? You know, I used to just think of it, I live in Frankston, but then I go somewhere else to work. But now Frankston's also become the place that I live and work as well. What are your thoughts on what this means for sort of the future of living in a fantastic city like this?
Look, if I can say, I work for a large corporate, head offices in the middle of Melbourne, and I've been a commuter in and out of Melbourne for many years. And then in March, like a lot of us, I was told, stay home and don't come back. I work from home. We were lucky we had the technology already in place to be able to work remotely and, you know, use things like Zoom and whatnot. And it's interesting watching my colleagues and watching management in what they've responded and what they've told me about what the future will look like. And the CEO of the organisation and, you know, the company I work for, we employ tens of thousands of people, has made it clear to everybody, we will not be reverting to how we were. It will change. And, you know, I think, you know, from their perspective, they've realised, hang on a minute, I don't really need all this expensive real estate in the middle of town. And the staff are happier as well. And certainly, you know, living in Frankston, I love it here, but, you know, the worst part about living in Frankston for me has been having to commute into the Melbourne CBD. So I'm really looking forward to spending a lot more time locally. You know, with the type of work I do, there are no roles in Frankston with any organisation down here. So this is, you know, the future. Once we're out of lockdown and once our economies are picked up, I think we'll be better off as a result for a lot of us anyway.
Yeah.
So you're involved in sort of HR for quite a large organisation. Well, what does it look like from that end?
Well, I'll speak personally from my experience over the years, actually, on working from home, and the nature of my work has meant that I have had a home office for most of my career and worked very flexibly, and really have enjoyed that work-life balance that comes with it. It doesn't always work perfectly. You know, sometimes there's work into the evening after my son had gone to bed as opposed to during the day. So, but that flexible way of working is something that I've really enjoyed over a long period of my career. And it's been fascinating to see how many people have now had the opportunity to experience that for themselves, enforced at first. But what I'm noticing is how organisations, many people have been surprised that people can still perform well, or maybe even better, when they're working from home, which I think has been a sticking block for many companies historically. They don't quite trust or quite believe that their staff will work as well or as diligently when they're at home. And it's absolutely the case. And many people, I bought here because I could get into Melbourne on the train. I live close to Camden Station. So giving myself that flexibility to get into the city if I needed to. But actually, I think I don't think we'll go back, and I hope we don't, because people who've gained those extra hours through not commuting have been putting that to great use with their families, their own well-being. So I think some flexibility will emerge around how we plan work going forward.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll just say that I think that's right. What I've actually heard from people who actually live further down the peninsula, they used to talk about an hour and a half to get into the city. But I know somebody works in defence and they're down on the peninsula, and they think it's fantastic. A bit like what Brad was saying, I think that, you know, that time wasted. I think it's going to be an interesting thing, because there has always been that distrust of, if I can't see you here, maybe you're not working, which is sort of that process orientation rather than output. You know, rather than an output sort of oriented sort of mode with people. So it's interesting down at the TAFE, of course, where I am now. I actually only stopped going down there 5 minutes down the road when stage 4 came in. So I was still going there. There's reasons why I was. I was health and safety representative, and so it was sort of important for me to have one key HSR, health and safety rep on each campus. So that we did still have some other teaching staff coming in with students, not many, but people who had to do practical work and be assessed on practical stuff. I've got to say, I wouldn't say anything if I wasn't this way around, but I think it was a very good setup down there with hand sanitisation, et cetera, and mind you, I pushed a fair bit too, but no, it was well set up. So I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know how employers are going to react. I know it's very hard for teachers to have Zoom classrooms with 15 or 20 students. Here we are with 4, and I'm thinking I better not butt in, or better be polite. But imagine with 15 or 20 students, it is actually, the challenges are more than just technology. It's management, classroom management, 15 or 20 students, very difficult.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time. Doing online teaching and webinars and things like that. I think there's definitely something about how you. There's an element that's missing from that human interaction, that instant sort of feedback that you get. But the flip side is that there are a whole bunch of other benefits in terms of lifestyle. Michael Harrison's just commented in the conversation that one of the positives is that we can recognise the idea that satellite cities can actually work. Yeah. And one of the things that we did in between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2 is we had what I'd call the Peninsula Pod with some members of my team, where they'd come and, the weather was nice enough, we could work on my deck. We have a big table there. I wasn't getting them to sand the deck or anything. We actually have a table there which enables us to sort of set up laptops and so on. And even doing that occasionally, if you could think about how you could use a city like Frankston to really become one of those sort of hub cities for small work teams and so on, to come together every now and then as we kind of refashion the way that we work. Colleen Johnson's just asked, and we're trying to steer away from policy questions at the moment, but Colleen's commented that if we were elected, would we advocate a switch to laptops for council officers like in Casey Council? Probably shouldn't mention Casey Council too much for other reasons, but from a workforce management perspective, certainly my employer, we've been working in a kind of flexible working environment for a very long time. I don't see why we couldn't allow that to happen with council. There'll always be some things that have to be done on site, whether it's customer service or certain things that require engineering or and so on. But an awful lot of modern work now within a council is about driving a computer. So does it really matter whether or not somebody has to be tied to a desk or not in the same way?
I think there is a lot of office space issues at the Civic Centre. It's, I don't know if any of you have ever had a look behind the front counter and the back office areas. It is a bit archaic. It is a bit tight. It is a bit congested. And I think, you know, what more people would have to agree with now more than ever is that, you know, a part of the answer to that problem is to make people mobile, that they can work anywhere. You know, we've already talked here about the advantages for as your work-life balance, how you can, you know, reduce your commute, spend more time with your family, etc. And you know, it's very, you know, 20th century, if you like, to the demand that everyone's at a desk in an office. So, you know, we want the staff at the council to be happy because that's how we get the most out of them. That's how the community will get the most out of them. We want them to be, you know, have the ability to move around. So, yeah, you'd absolutely have to do that. You know, the office space advantages alone is a good enough reason.
The great thing, I think, is that everybody has had this experience now of this thing called working from home, which for some people who've wanted to encourage that have had pushback even from staff historically, because they've not known, it's a fear of something different and a change. But now everyone has the experience. You know, people can be invited for their feedback and comments on what will work best for them. And I'm sure there'll be a mixture of feedback. But
easy to convince people now.
Exactly.
Right? You won't have to convince them anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
They can tell you how best it'll work for them and for the organisation. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing about the working remotely. There was a study done, I think it was 10 years ago, about working from home. It looked at two things. One was working from home productivity, and also a person who comes in for a short period of time to cover somebody's on maternity leave or something like that. They found that in both instances, productivity was much better because the person who came in short term to cover long service leave or something else didn't know anybody that much, so they actually didn't have lots of discussions in there over coffee and all the rest of it. Not that that's a bad thing. And the person who worked from home, similarly, they did reach out every now and then to people, but they weren't as distracted. And they actually felt better because they got more done, the output aspect. So,
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be great if we, you know, as we go forward, we can really think about how we can, you know, have the city that is an attractive place, not just to live, but is also one where we can work. And that's only going to be good for things like rebooting the local economy, because it means that I'm not buying my coffee somewhere else. I'm buying it down the street, which is incidentally also the name of my favourite local cafe.
I know that.
But I think it kind of bodes for a really interesting way in which you can keep people in your city and keep it vibrant and active as well. Probably worth, you know, as part of that, touching on how do you then make sure that you can sort of connect with and communicate with people. And I'm really conscious that even before the pandemic, local media was already under a lot of pressure. We're obviously, all four of us are involved in an election campaign, really difficult to get messages out there. And it strikes me that the whole local media landscape has shifted abruptly. We know that the Leader newspaper group have reduced their staff, and obviously their the printing. Bayside News, we know, is also under similar pressure. There's also, advertising revenues have gone down for local media as well. So just wondering how it is that, the four of us can actually, not just reach out and connect, but also hear from and listen to what's going on in our local area. How do we make sure the football clubs or the basketball clubs or the local not-for-profits or the local businesses are actually able to get their messaging out there in a very different way?
To be honest with you, the local newspapers haven't been much chopped for a few years now. The way the paper has been circulated or not circulated over the last few years has been a real issue. It wasn't arriving in everyone's letterbox. As a result, not everyone was reading it, and now that it's completely disappeared. We do have the Frankston Times, by the way, which I would urge everyone to have a look at, as it is a completely independent newspaper. But otherwise, the obvious thing that's happening here is the transition to online, the transition to social media, the transition to self-publishing. All these organisations are all on Facebook and Instagram and whatever, and they're reaching a lot of these pages, like Frankston Community Notice Board, Frankston Notice Board, one or two others. They're reaching tens upon tens of thousands of people, right? And I put it to you that the local newspapers haven't been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly been a bit slow in adapting to the change. I think this is the same problem that Fairfax had as well, when they didn't shift as well. So you're sort of entering this world of social media campaigning and how you connect with people. How is it looking to you?
Well, it's a really big learning curve, actually, some of which I'm thoroughly enjoying when I get some success and actually connect the right thing, or I upload a photo, or I realize how you have to have a domain name to link to this or put ads up. So I'm learning, but I appreciate that they're a big part of the community who would be in my boat. So actually being able to connect with them, because they may not use social media either. It's not been a big part of my life. So I think things like this, keeping things real, keeping things bite-sized. I wonder if people might feel a bit overloaded as we get closer to October the 23rd. But I think it's just being creative and just reaching out to people and saying, hi, I'm here, I want to hear from you. And how can we best communicate with you? What do you need? How do you want to hear? So I think with everything that's this new COVID normal, it's a trial by error and seeing what works, and just being optimistic that it is going to have we are going to have a way of connecting with people. Either that, or I get on my bike and have a flag out the back and stickers on my helmet that say vote one for Sue Baker.
We want to see it now.
You want to see it? Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I'll just want to be empathise with you, and I'll look at Steve's face when I say this, because you have a big smile probably. I can empathise with you about the social media thing. It's sure, for years it was Zuckerberg, you're never going to get me, but I can see how but he has.
He doesn't even know who you are.
He knows more about me than I do now, I'm sure. I won't use that other name for Facebook. But yeah, I know what you're saying. And look, it was, sure. I don't know, about a month or 6 weeks ago, whenever I started, it was a big learning curve. I recall once in a class I was teaching. I am actually a bit of a computer person, databases and things like this, development, that sort of stuff, programming. And somebody in one of my database classes, she said, "Look, I have experience with Facebook. Will that get me an exemption?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so." And she said, "Well, have you used Facebook?" I said, "Well, no, I haven't at this stage." And well, how can you say that? And I said, yeah, okay, give me 5 minutes. And I went out, just made a quick profile. It was with a Dropbox, all that. And I said, yeah, well, I've just used it. No, it's not going to get you an exemption in database development, I'm afraid. It's a nice try, though. It's a nice try.
That's right.
I suppose the flip side of this is how you deal with some of the more negative aspects of social media and digital campaigning. And I'm sure we've all had some experience of dealing with trolls. I also understand from talking to a number of people, particularly there's a group that I've been only recently joined called More Women in Local Government. And I know from talking to some people involved in that females in particular have been getting a really tough time with social media trolling and things like that. So I'm just wondering if you could share any experiences or any tips on how you've been dealing with it, because obviously we're keen to see many more women get involved in local council and local governance. But what would you say to others across the city that are concerned about this?
I've read quite a lot about this, and but I have to say I've had no personal experience so far. I mean, the only troll I have in my mind is about that big with blue hair that I probably had when I was about 10. So I'm yet. I mean, people are entitled to their opinions, and people don't always express themselves as eloquently or as clearly or as nicely as you'd like. So maybe that's a question to come back to. I mean, I do think, I've handled many difficult situations at work, working with different people or even customers, because my work has been very much about service delivery across a range of different industry sectors, and very often it's about supporting people to deliver that great service. So helping people deal with difficult nuisance customers, sometimes even people that have been issued they've been required to stay away from an organisation because of their behaviour. So I've had lots of experience of helping people have those conversations, and how you manage yourself first and how you then put into words what you're going to say. So, but I'll let you know if it comes to anything like that I have experience of here in this candidate arena.
And look, and the other side, of course, is the stuff that's outside of our control around misinformation and disinformation as well. And I think as a candidate or as a community member, it's really important that we sort of play a straight bat, so to speak, in terms of how we're communicating with people and what it is we're communicating. And I'd probably also say to people is to, verify facts. So, coming back to the Spoonville thing, there was a concern that council were taking away Spoonvilles. The moderator of a particular notice board closed off the comments whilst it got verified with council. CEO came back and said, no, we encourage the Spoonvilles. Yeah. And so, it's quite interesting how quickly rumours can take off. We had a couple of comments come through, if I may. So Frankston Politics Watch is really interested to hear more about what you can bring to the Northwest Ward. I'm happy to give you a few minutes now, or depending on whether we want to just keep the flow of the conversation going, or we can save that for one of our Tuesday, Friday candid conversations if you prefer. But do you want to just say a couple of words now?
Let's do that. Look, I'm really happy to even talk directly with groups like this and take that offline. So if there's somebody there, an individual to talk to, then I'd be really happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay, great, fantastic. Yeah, we can do that. So I don't think we've set the topic for Tuesday's discussion, but you're more than welcome to come and join us. And I hope
the organisation that the question was coming from.
That question was from Frankston Politics Watch.
So,
so Frankston Politics Watch, come back on Tuesday, and we'll and you'll hear much more from Sue.
And I'll follow up with them
what she
too.
wants to do. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Brilliant. Thank you. Oliver Hill, and I don't know if you can see my background, but that's the West Ward behind me. But Oliver Hill has posed a question, which is, we've got 2 long-term Frankston residents. I presume they're referring to you, Peter and Brad, and 2 newer residents in the conversation. Oliver's asking what the respective advantages of long-term connection contrasted with fresher local view is. I think that's a really interesting question, actually. Peter, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I will. I'm very mindful that there's two newer Frankston residents right on the screen. Look, I'm sure. I think there's something in having lived in an area for a while. You've seen it change. You've seen how it was, how it is now. You can see where things have gone a bit downhill, where things can be improved. I'm not sure that I'd say it's a huge advantage or disadvantage. I'm not just being nice to you guys. I think there's a lot of other factors that come into play. I'm not going to say it's nothing, but I will say that I think who a person is, what experiences they've had, what they bring to the table as far as professionalism, their background, what they've actually done. And I tell you what, one of the most important things, how they interact with other people, is one of the really big things. It's something, but I wouldn't be saying it's a huge thing.
I might have my own answer to that, if I may. I mean, I'm a long-term Frankston resident, and it would be really easy for me to say here that yes, you have to be a long-term resident, but look, it is handy in knowing the history of things, knowing why, for example, we have particular bylaws because we had problems with a particular issue in the past, understanding how we arrived at our present position is very handy to know. But what's more important than how long you've lived in Frankston in a councillor, much more important is the ability to make rational decisions and judgments according to evidence and according to facts, and have an open mind and listen to your fellow councillors, listen to the council officers. When you are making a decision in the council chamber, when you are deciding on your vote, that's what's important. And that's got nothing to do with how long you've lived here, right? It's how professional you are. It's how analytical you are in your head. You know, you might have lived here your entire life, but if you've got a closed mind, and if you're not prepared to listen to anybody, then you are the wrong person for the council.
Yeah.
So
I think there's been experience with that, and I won't say any more.
That's right. There's all kinds over the years that we've had in the council. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think my perspective is I've lived in a number of different communities. I lived in Caulfield North for 10 years and bringing up my son there, so was very much involved with a range of different community groups there, sport and foster caring, so got very much into that community. I've been up in Sydney for a couple of years and getting to know that community through the disability organisation I was working with. And in the communities I've lived in overseas, both in the UK and a very short spell in the US, what I've always done is both work and also get involved in some kind of community group. When I was in the States, for example, I got involved with the local library and the mobile library service, which in the deepest south of Georgia was quite an experience, I can tell you, going out to some very remote and wild places, but loved it, and getting to know the people that live there. So working in a place is one thing, and as I think Stephen, you said earlier, often you go somewhere else, or Brad, you go somewhere else to do your work, so you're not working in the community, but working and living in a community and getting to know locals. So that said, I think what I bring is a lot of experience of working and living in communities that are very varied. I'm really passionate about being here, making Frankston my home. And I'd love to be able to bring some of the insights, perspectives, experiences I have of working with issues to achieve bigger goals, and
Absolutely
working with the people of Frankston, who in effect, I guess, are the customers to the council. You know, the council will be elected to serve the community, and that's part of my DNA, I guess, of how I've lived and worked. So yeah, that's my view, I think.
Yeah, I think my perspective on this is probably very similar to Sue's in that it's 5 years now that since we moved as a family down to Frankston, and we know we're going to be here for the next 20 years plus as the kids will go through the high school and all of that. But I suppose I've had the privilege of being able to live and work in all sorts of different places around the world, to visit all sorts of different places, both in poor countries and in Europe and so on. And I think what it does, I think what it does do is it brings a set of different ideas and perspectives. So I've moved away from Australia and back, I think 3 different times over my over my life. And when you go away and you come back, you're never the same. Yeah. And so we've chosen Frankston as the place that we want to live in. And one of the first things I did when I got here was to join one of our voluntary organisations, so a voluntary emergency services organisation, in order so I could connect quite quickly with people in the community and start to form those bonds. I think having those external experiences coming in, and as I think Brad's touched on, that institutional memory is actually really important for a kind of vibrant and thoughtful council deliberations. I think it's important that, I work for an organisation that celebrated its centenary last year. I'm within the sort of the Australian office. I'm one of only a handful of people that have got more than sort of 5 years service. So in many respects, being able to be that kind of institutional memory in a place is vitally important, because if you don't understand where you've come from, you don't necessarily understand how you're going to get to where it is you want to go, and understanding the challenges that come with that. So I actually would, I'd be a strong advocate for a sort of a mixture of both the old and the new, in order to have a really effective council.
Let's make two really quick points, Stephen. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not butting in.
No, go on.
Yep. First of all, I think it's interesting to corporate memory and what goes on at the council. It'd be handy to have Brad around. Be very handy. The other thing is that there's only one advantage in being really old, and that is that I've done both. I've been local for a long time. I've done the move around Australia and a bit overseas as well. Not burnt out yet, mind you, but around, Sydney, Perth, and overseas in different places in different ways at different times. But I think there is a bit, as you're saying, I think there's a lot to saying having a mixture. There's advantages in both things, I think, bringing it into council. So, yep. Yeah.
So look, Michael Harrison's just piped up with a comment here, which you all present well. Thank you very much for that, Michael. But he's really looking for candidates that have got an emotional investment in Frankston. So I guess the question I've got is, to what degree do you feel invested or connected to Frankston?
Who's going first?
Well, I'm happy to go first if you like. So, in particular, since we settled as a family on making Frankston our long-term home, I get really quite passionate about having a sense of community. One of the things, prior to living here, we lived in Cheltenham, and then immediately before that, we lived in Carnegie. And one of the things that we noticed almost immediately when we moved down here was when we then changed the kids' primary school to the local primary school, which is just down the road from the house. The sense of community that we felt part of almost instantly was quite remarkable. And there's very few places that I've lived where I felt that. And so I've got as a result of that, then getting involved in, the fire brigade, the life-saving club, the kids basketball team, and all of these things, is I can walk down a street in Frankston, well, not every street, but many streets in Frankston. 9 times out of 10, I will bump into somebody that I recognize. I will say hello, we'll have a chat. It might delay me a bit to whatever it is I've got to get onto. but there's a real sense of community, which for what is really a large city, is quite remarkable. And that's the thing I really love about this place. You know, and so, you know, to say, to sort of respond to Michael, I'd say, yes, I'm absolutely emotionally invested in this city. I absolutely care about the people that live here. And if I didn't, I wouldn't bother, because I've actually got quite an exciting career that I can go on and do. But I want to see I want to see Frankston be all it can be.
And Frankston can be a lot more. You know, it really can. I'm sure we've all heard over and over, Frankston's got potential. It's absolutely got potential. On the doorstep of the peninsula, we've got the beach, and this sense of community in Frankston is much higher than anywhere else I've ever lived. I moved here in the late 90s, and Frankston had this reputation, and now having lived here, it's completely undeserved. And what's most telling is that the people who live in Frankston, they don't want to leave Frankston, right? They want to stay. I mean, if Frankston was such a terrible place, they'd all be looking to move, wherever. But no, they love it here. Everyone who lives here loves it here. And look, let me tell you just a little story about Frankston. I had a relative from New South Wales who wanted to stay with me for 2 weeks for a holiday, and I said, yeah, no worries. And then later on he rang up and he goes, oh, I'm going to stay a week at a mate's place in Oakley, and then I'll stay a week with you. I said, no problem. Right, so spends his week in Oakley, comes to Frankston, and of course, show him around a bit. We go up to Oliver's Hill, here and there, the beach. And he said, my friend in Oakley was like, Frankston, but having seen Frankston, he's like, now, Oakley, what would you want to live in Oakley for? Right? And he's, hit it right on the head. He could see in a couple of hours that this is a great place to live. And I've had it said to me that Frankston is like a big country town. It really is. It's not a part of Melbourne suburbia. People know people, and like you, I walk down the street and people I met through the kids' school, through the football club, or what other organisations I've had involvement with. People know people, and everyone who's here loves it here, and they know it.
Yeah.
You go next.
Yeah. Last year, my son and I were looking for where to buy somewhere for me as a home, and we did look at a range of different suburbs from here, probably down the bay. But Frankston just seemed to offer so many pluses. I can walk to the beach from where I am. The train line is there. All the major retailers are available. There's walk to coffee shops, little cafes, all the community services that you've got here. I mean, it is a one-stop shop really for everything. So making the decision to buy my home here, I mean, that is a major investment of self, actually, to make that sort of commitment. So whilst I might not be as embedded as the rest of you yet in terms of really working in and being involved with different organisations, I am here, and I'm really loving getting to know all the different parts, both of the ward that I'm in, but other parts of Frankston over this year. It's been really great. So yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. I'll just say quickly, that's an interesting story Brad told there, because very similar thing. People coming down from Brisbane. Now, I came from Brisbane many years ago. I've been down this way off and on, but for a long time now, completely on. The same sorts of things that you guys have said about Frankston are true for me as well. I can't see myself ever leaving here. Why would I leave Frankston when it's got everything I want? It's got all my friends here. Friends who visited from Brisbane have come down, and I live in South Frankston, I suppose. And the guy came down. He said, "You've got hills. I said, yes, there are hills. There are hills here in South Frankston.
I'm here.
Oliver Hill, that's right. Yes, love you, Oliver. And for a start, and yeah, and there's the peninsula. So, you know, we ride motorcycles, a bit dangerous thing to do, but fun. So, golly, the other side of it is that it's easy for me. I just strike straight out down to the peninsula from Frankston, gateway to the peninsula, and you're riding around in the countryside. And I've got to say, it's beautiful countryside. And then you're just up the road here to Frankston and you've got everything you need here. So yeah, it's a great place. So why would you leave? You know, you discover it and you sort of think, oh, all these other people have got these notions that it's not great. Well, we'll keep it to ourselves. That's okay.
Well,
Peter,
so-
did you
go
just
on,
say
Fred.
you're a motorbike rider?
Well, that's right. Only the
Yeah.
best bike, of course. It's a Ducati. I just thought try that.
Ah, very nice. Well, that is one thing I'm looking forward to doing when all the restrictions start, is getting my next bike.
Oh, good on you.
And also heading down the peninsula. It's something I've come to later on in life, learned how to ride, and
Well,
got my full license about 5 years ago now. But yep,
never
would love
ride
to be
alone.
able to do that.
Always have somebody with you. So there you go.
Exactly,
Yeah,
Good
exactly.
ride, Benny.
Yeah.
I've been keeping an eye on sort of bikes myself, and every now and then I kind of have this flirtation with getting a scooter to change my commute. But obviously, I don't need to commute as much anymore, so maybe that's off the table. But I do. BRAP is sort of a local supplier of a very different kind of bike. Have you either of you ridden one of those?
Yeah.
No, tell me more.
So they're on Plain Street. I don't know if I'm assuming they're still there, but
No,
Yeah.
they're not there.
they're
Are
not
they?
there anymore.
They actually, the shop front's still there, but they're gone.
Oh, they're gone. That's a shame.
So have they moved, Brad, or they just gone out of business?
I heard they moved, I believe, to Carrum Downs, or went kind of online, or something like that.
Yeah.
They did want to redevelop the building, but
Well, I was hoping that they were still there, because in the spirit of going local first, I was going to recommend you go and have a look down there, Sue, but I don't know the quality of their bikes.
They're
it's
very small.
a
Very
different
small, are
type
they?
of bike.
Different type of bike. Okay, very good.
No
But we're-
Ducatis.
Okay.
But I'm just conscious of time, and I just want to grab a couple of other comments from the people who are watching us. Nikki Foster, who runs a local planning and design business, she just commented that, you know, it's easy for us to sort of agree whilst we're having a bit of a chat about things.
Yeah.
But how would we actually do things when there are kind of key issues that we actually fundamentally disagree on? I mean, I can't think of one off the top of my head. And maybe that's something that we should be saving for our Tuesday, Friday conversations. But, you know, how do we make sure that as we go into the future, that we are working with a council that behaves differently from the one that we've seen so far?
There has to be respect, right? That's number one. Between the councillors, there has to be respect for each other as individuals, and respect for each other's opinions and points of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the attitude I took into the council chamber was that I treated it as a workplace, right? So in my professional life, in my workplace, you know, there's standards and there's expectations, otherwise I'm out of a job. Okay, right? So to me, that's what it's about. You have to listen to all points of view, and not just from the councillors, but the council officers, and importantly, members of the public. And you enter into the decision-making process with an open mind, right? And if everybody did that, we wouldn't have these issues. I think a part of the problem is we've had councillors who haven't worked professionally, and look, I'm not saying that's a requirement, but when you don't have respect for other people's opinions, when you've come from an environment where that hasn't applied, it's no wonder we end up where we are.
Yeah, I'll just throw in a quote there from, because of part of my background is science, but also working on boards. When you've, as Brad has done, and maybe you other guys a bit as well, when you've worked on a well-functioning board that basically shows you firsthand the standards for a great board to, where directors get along with each other. And the council is essentially a board of directors, if you like, with the board, with the mayor as the chairperson. When you've worked on a very good board, well-functioning board, you understand how it can work. You understand how respect works. And you understand there's a scientist guy from the back, he wrote a book called The Ascent of Man, and his name was Abraham Bronowski. And one of the quotes in his book was, for God's sakes, think it not possible that you might be mistaken. And that goes to Brad's point about you look at the evidence at the time. You might come in thinking you know it all, but you always have to have that bit of reserve to listen to other opinions, because somebody might say something that you never knew, and you have to reset, and you really have to have respect for other opinion, not have a predisposed disposition to vote one way or the other.
Absolutely right. And that happened to me in the council chamber a number of times. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I'd hear over here, someone would raise a point, and I'd think, you know what, I hadn't considered that. And he's probably right.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so,
be big enough to do that. So.
Yeah.
So I just invite you to share your perspective on it.
Yeah, well, just thinking, my experience of working on big issues and big projects is that a key part of that is being really clear on why we're doing anything, why we're coming together as a team. So there's some good work being done at the moment on the 2040 planning. I know there's some documents up around the 2021-25 plan as well. So once the council have decided on what it is that we're working towards and what we're aiming to achieve, that really sets out a framework and a direction. And I think being able to come back and to remind ourselves of why we're in this place to do the work and who, again, are our customers or who are we working for. I think that's really important to hold in mind. The debate is really, really important, but I think there are those checks and balances as to why we're here. The evidence and the information that's been collated comes into it as well. Reading a lot, having a good bet to bring in views and opinions to oversee that. So the mayor working with the CEO is a really important relationship as well, as I see it.
Yep.
Thank you, Sue. And I can't disagree with anything that any of you have said, which probably defeats the point of the question. But I've certainly from my experience in terms of leading teams, is that if you can agree on what your kind of overall strategic vision and purpose is, the debate's then about how you get there, not about what the vision and the strategic purpose is. And being open to that compromise and listening to different perspectives is so critical to moving in the right direction. And I would certainly hope that a new council, a fresh start for Frankston Council, would be very much taking the view of, let's agree early on what that vision and mission is that we want to achieve. And then the rest of the time is about working towards doing that. And that means that sometimes, I do this all the time at work. My colleagues are constantly telling me I'm wrong and they're right. And I often have to put my hand up and say, you're right, I'm wrong. And I think, that's part of having a mature discussion and debate and about finding solutions to some of the urgent problems that we've got. I'm going to give you all, I'm just going to give you all a quick opportunity to sort of give a final remark. And then just to remind the people who are watching us that we'll be getting back into policy discussions on our regular Tuesday, Friday candid conversations. But Sue, perhaps if you'd like to share a final word before we wrap up.
Yeah, sure. You suggested, Steve, that we might talk about local community projects or a local good news story as part of today's get together. And what I wanted to share is the work that's been done on Nats Track. I live quite close to Nats Track. It's a path that runs from Sky Road alongside the golf course there, and they've just it's just been resurfaced, and it is fabulous. And I understand that it's been a massive community project, community council, family coming together, and I just struck of groups, local work that can be done to have an impact and make a change. And it means I can walk down it now, not in my gum boots. It's a really nice walking track through to the back of Monterey School, across to Monterey Park, where there's a great dog park. Yeah, so no, I just wanted to share that. It's a really great piece of work that's been done there. And I believe the schools are working on creating some artwork or planter boxes or something that's going to go at either end of the track as well to bring it even more to life. So anyway, but thank you for having me on today. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I mean, we've only spoken once before now, and it really is a pleasure to have you with us, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation. Peter.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, a very short story that I picked up from local, the Bayside paper online. It caught my eye because a couple of months ago, when we could, keep our social distance and not wear a mask and go outside 5 kilometres, I went down to Peninsula Honey.
Oh wow!
It's great. It's a great place. It's local honey, and I went in there and I noticed a group of school children, elder years, and they were international students, clearly. And I said hello to them and asked where they were from and all of this. And I just noticed they're lovely kids, and they're going off in a little minibus looking around the peninsula. And I thought how great it is that they're here, because diversity is a good thing. I just noticed in the paper a short thing about these some of these boarding students at schools, international students. They had to make a really heartfelt decision not long ago whether to return or to stay. And there's a bunch who did decide to stay, and they haven't seen their parents for 8 months now, which is very tough on them. But there's a little bit I'll read quickly. It says, the spirit of these students show this. I've got another screen there, you see. Spirit of these students show their strength and resilience have been incredible to watch. They have not returned to the loving arms of their parents in over 8 months. They have not smelled the familiar scent of the cherry blossoms in Tokyo or walked the busy streets of bustling Shanghai. They have not laughed with friends in the cafes of Hanoi. Now, holding out with COVID-19 and holding the line is a very important thing. There's people who are doing it tougher than the rest of us. And I think we should, hats off to them. They're a great example for us. The only other thing, as I say, is that, united for Frankston, we do have to work together, any of us who get on council. And I think it's a good question, a point's well made by all here.
Thank you, Peter. And as always, good to talk to you. Brad, have you got any final reflections?
Look, I just want to say that I'm really impressed actually with what I've heard from the three of you today. To be honest, you guys are here for the right reasons. You're rational. You're are prepared to work with other people. You're prepared to listen, and if we can have a council made up of people like that, then the winner is Frankston. So I really hope all three of you are elected.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Oh, and
Thank you,
me.
Brad.
Thank you.
Yeah, and don't leave yourself out.
You vote for me first, everybody. Great. Great. Thank
Remember,
you.
there's room for three in Southwood.
Exactly, there is. Yes.
Thank you, Brad. I mean, I suppose my reflection, particularly over the last week, is that I think it's this community spirit that I've seen in Frankston. You know, and seeing the way that people have been kind of reaching out virtually to their community, say, I'm in a bit of bother, I need some help, you know, whether it's something that they're missing at home or they've got a housing issue, and just seeing the way in which Frankston residents have rallied around others has been really quite extraordinary. We've got a WhatsApp group in our street where we check in on each other. It's just, I have to say, I'm just kind of blown away by the community spirit here. And look, I'm really grateful for the three of you for your time today, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Do it again.
Great. Thanks,
Great.
Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
We'll talk
Thanks,
soon.
Brad.
Bye.
Take care.